Happy to do that. So in our session, digitization is here. Does it help or hinder outcomes measurement? We will focus on the opportunities and challenges that come with the ongoing digitization of, well, healthcare in general, but also healthcare service delivery in particular. And what I aim to contribute to the panel is, well, insights from the ongoing digitization of the German healthcare system, and in particular on the introduction of prescription digital therapeutics into the collectively funded statutory health insurance system in Germany that covers just about 90% of the German population. And since the German health system was one of the first globally to introduce, again, prescription apps, so to speak, into their population-wide health coverage, I think this might be an interesting contribution to the panel. Yeah, so PROMs really have moved to the center of attention for also prescription digital therapeutics in Germany, with a relatively recent introduction of new healthcare laws that now mandate a ongoing performance monitoring of these prescription digital therapeutics. And while the law already outlines that kind of like the dimensions of measurement should center around PROMs, adherence, and also patient satisfaction, it's really interesting to now come to the operationalization of this question. You might think that digital tools like, again, therapy apps might lend themselves very well to collecting all kinds of data, also PROMs, for example, but we really have to look at how to bring this into reality. And what we see is basically three core challenges that I would want to discuss also in this year's conference. So the first being, prescription digital therapies often employ behavioral or educational kind of like measures to also convey their therapeutic elements, right? And the more we add in terms of data collection to that, think PROMs, think questionnaires, think all these kinds of elements that might disturb the therapeutic elements of these prescription digital therapies, it might interfere with the therapeutic effect, and we really want to minimize these negative effects on therapeutic benefit, right? One challenge that we aim to address. The second challenge that we need to think about is when we think of apps, and be it medical apps or leisure time apps, patients compare them with their, again, free time apps, right? The little icon of your prescription digital therapy sits right next to your messenger app, sits right next to your social media apps. And so if the use of your digital therapy becomes too burdensome because of like too much additional data collection, for example, it really doesn't serve its purpose well, right? We must not sacrifice therapeutic or like the overall appeal of the tool for collecting better data, right? And I think the last really important aspect that also needs to be mentioned is the credibility of the PROMs that we collect, right? In many healthcare systems, PROMs are still viewed as some like inferior outcome measure when compared to more conventional hard outcomes, right? And so we really need to move the perspective. We need to shape the perspective here. It's not PROMs versus conventional outcome data, but it's these two different types of outcomes that should complement each other in like really assessing the real world care effectiveness of these digital solutions. Again, we discussed a little bit about PROMs already, right? And we think that we really need to strengthen the role of PROMs in real world care delivery by making sure that we capture meaningful and also truly patient-centric outcomes, right? And that's sometimes not so easy. Think about also the development process of ICHOM standard sets, for example. We as academics who work in this field, we are always at risk, so to speak, to be a little bit too much in our ivory tower here. And so it's really, really important to pull patients in, because they can really move the needle in making sure that prompts really reflect what they care about. But also on a more conceptual level, I think patients are extremely important stakeholders for shaping and designing the healthcare environment of the future. Think about the current healthcare systems that we operate in, right? They've evolved over decades, in some cases over centuries now, and they are still pretty much focused on addressing acute conditions. Today, however, we are in a situation where the vast majority of the burden of disease is due to non-communicable diseases, right? Think cardiovascular conditions, think cancer, think metabolic conditions, think mental health, musculoskeletal health. All these kinds of conditions typically lead to, chronic conditions, and chronic conditions need different types of care than acute conditions, right? Let me maybe give you an example from like my clinical work. When we in the emergency department see a diabetic patient with like severely high blood sugar now, it's clear that they need acute treatment, right? But if it's a pre-existing condition, the very fact that they need acute and emergency care reflects that maybe the care pathway that they're on isn't structured well enough, because it didn't manage to prevent such exacerbation. So this like acute episode that basically developed out of a ideally stable chronic condition, right? And that's nothing new, right? Other people identified these challenges in modern healthcare systems before. But what we also see is that healthcare systems are very sluggish in a way to adapt to change, and also its restoring forces are really great. So it's really a challenge to introduce such change, especially if it's of the magnitude of changing care models, right? And that's where patients really have to come in. Strong patient advocates that say, look, the current healthcare infrastructure doesn't really serve us so well. It doesn't really meet the needs that we actually have with now our changing spectrum of conditions that we come to you as healthcare professionals and seek care. And I think that's on a very conceptual level a key role that patients will be able to take and to really change how healthcare delivery works in the future. Yeah, very important question. So, I mean, value-based healthcare in general has evolved, right? From a mostly academic set of ideas, maybe concepts, to, by now an integral part of modern healthcare systems. Again, because of everything we've discussed before, it's not easy to put value-based healthcare into practice, right? But ICHOM is really where it all culminates, right? Where the experts from around the world come together, share their ideas, yes, share their theoretical insights, but also show how does it work on the ground? How do we really manage to implement value-based healthcare principles in the real world, in the real world care setting, right? And I think that's really, really exciting. Plus, on a more personal level, quite a while back by now, I was fortunate enough during my graduate studies in the US to work with ICHOM myself, and that's why I'm super excited now to join this year's ICHOM conference as a panelist. Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, meeting the value-based healthcare experts from all around the world will be, I think, generally the most exciting part of the conference. But again, since it's really so important to learn how things get implemented on the ground, I'm also really looking forward to the on-site visits on Wednesday to maybe peek a little bit under the hood of some of the leading healthcare institutions in the Netherlands this year, to learn from them and to see how value-based healthcare works on the ground in the Netherlands.